So we're continuing through our Quest for Wholeness book, and this week we were reading chapter 5, which, oh boy, some more fun with really frivolous topics, responsibility. Yeah, just a little light conversation that we're going to have today. Now, before we jump into it, I wanted to first say Bill is still in the hospital, Bill and Marta, but he has been moved from ICU. He is in a room now. We are holding the prayer space for him, absolutely, and he is moving along and healing. Our Mary is in rehab, still processing through and doing very well. And our beloved Tina, when I went and saw her earlier this week, her sister was already frustrated with her because she kept getting up and walking around and doing stuff. So she's doing really, really well. And we were talking about that this morning too, that there's a lot of, it says it in the song we just sang, my course is up to me. Of course it's up to me. Stuff happens, things show up in our lives, and ultimately we have the responsibility for what we decide to do with that and what we create with that and what changes we make happen in our lives.
This is a quote that was in the book by Charles Fillmore. He says, God gives, and excuse the pronouns, and this is Charles Fillmore,
yes,
back in the day, right?
1800s.
So you got to take that into consideration. God gives himself to man, and man has the power to make himself what he will. Freedom of will is man's inheritance, and he can use that freedom to build or destroy as he determines.
Ugh.
Yeah. Responsibility, right?
Oh, yay. I don't sense waves of celebration coming at me from the audience. Wait a second. So yes, it's so much easier. We've talked about this before. There are so many religions out there that separate us from God. That God is this patriarchal figure who is out there judging, rewarding, punishing, all of that. Unity does not do that. There isn't this separation of a God out there and a devil out there, where the God is trying to reward or parent us and the devil is trying to pull us away from God. That paradigm is not an outer thing in unity. Heaven or hell is an inner creation every minute of every day. I can live an entire day in hell if I choose. That's the choices we make. We have the choice to do that. I'm not saying deny what's going on, and if you're unhappy, act like you're happy. That's not what we're saying. Acknowledging the reality of what we're going through and then moving to bring ourselves to center, that can be the choice.
I think one of the things I love about this chapter, and one of the things we have to let go is good and bad, that judgment, right? So you might be sitting here saying, man, that responsibility, that's a bad word. No, it's actually just a word.
It's just a word.
And if you really think of it as empowerment, wholeness is about being empowered. Taking responsibility is taking our part and allowing ourselves to be empowered to basically take away blame, like you were saying. I can't blame God. I can't blame the devil. And I've said to Trish many times, unity has really messed me up because it was so much easier when I had other things to blame.
Yeah.
Now I have to take responsibility for myself, right? And I have to make sure that I'm making the right choices. And at the same time, but the flip side of that is empowerment. And I'm so thankful that I have that empowerment. Now, we're going to get into that and more, but the important thing is not only not blaming God or the devil or blaming others, but even you could get into this blaming ourselves. And we want to talk a little bit about blame this morning as well.
Absolutely.
Because that can get us in trouble as well.
Yeah. And we so often blame ourselves or shame ourselves for how we respond, for what we do, for where we're at, for how we're not keeping up with the Joneses or whatever it is. That's a waste of time and energy. It's, as he just said, we love to label things. We want things to be good or bad. We want to categorize everything and put it in a comfortable place for us. some of the worst things that happen in your life can lead you to the very best and highest things you have ever experienced. I'm here as almost a direct result of my husband's death. If he were still alive today, I would not be sitting here. My life would have gone on in West Palm Beach. You guys would have found somebody else here in Sebring, and we would all be living in these different spaces because life brings us different places with what happens and the choices we make because of it. Worst thing in my life, I wanted it so not to be true. And now I hear.
And that brings up something, and it can be a little mind-blowing, actually, when you think about the limitless possibilities that can unfold in our lives. And it's based on what we choose.
Right.
What choices we make. And your choice and the circumstances and the whole situation thankfully led to where we're at this morning.
Absolutely.
And we're all very thankful of that, right, Trish?
Yeah, yeah, I know.
But at the same time, like you said, it could have been a completely different choice made,
Absolutely.
and it would have went a whole different direction. And that's exciting because there again, that's empowerment. There's a lot of power in what responsibility we take. And I know for myself, one of the things that I thought about is I was taking a class with Unity, and they gave us a list. We do these different practices during the week, and they gave me a list of affirmations to make. And we were talking about forgiveness, and this ties into the shame thing that I wanted to touch on. The very first affirmation, and I'll read it to you because I included it today, and I felt very impressed to do this. I felt like this is probably going to speak to someone today. But this was the affirmation: I forgive myself completely for every mistake I have ever made. And I was like, I was so amazed at the power of that, because I realized there were things I was hanging on into in my life, blaming myself or not even recognizing. And we talk a lot about that in this chapter, and I know we did a Friday night, about the greatest gift that we have when we're talking about spiritual maturity and growth is awareness, gaining awareness of the things we may not even be aware of how the stories we tell ourselves, the ways we think, the belief systems we have. And when we become aware of that, that empowers us and enables us to make the changes that we need to make, correct? And I know that just the affirmation woke up in me. I realized so many things I hadn't forgiven myself for, that I needed to let go of the blame. That was actually hindrances to me having the unfolding of the life that I really was praying for and wanting, right? And so that can bring wholeness too. And I really felt like, and we hadn't talked about this, and it just sort of occurred to me right before service, that I think unforgiveness of ourselves, blaming ourselves or others, can also keep us from gaining and growing into that wholeness.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I don't know about you guys, but when I heard him say the affirmation, would you say it again?
Yes. I forgive myself completely of every mistake I have ever made.
Did anybody else go, ooh? Yeah. I literally felt my stomach go, oh, I don't know if I can do that.
And there's a list of 8 of them, and I'd be happy to share if anybody would like to have them after service. I'm not going to go through them all this morning.
Do they all make your hiney clench like that one does?
Yes, absolutely. They're all about forgiveness. But
yes. Because really, I mean, that's the thing. And if we can't forgive in here, we can't forgive out there. And so many times, have you ever noticed, I remember that this has been a repeating pattern in my life, and I don't know where this is coming from because we didn't talk about this at all. In relationship with my kids, with my husband, with whatever's happening, oftentimes the times I got the maddest or the hardest to deal with was when I made a realization that I was mad at me. And then it comes out on the other person, right? You're like, I can't believe you didn't do blah, 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 blah. And the whole time your little you inside is going, don't see me, don't see me, don't see me. Like don't notice that it's me. Yes, it's key to everything.
Have you ever said, they made me feel?
Yes.
No, actually, you chose to feel.
That is one of the most freeing things too, because it is so much easier to blame others. Right. To blame circumstances, to blame whatever it is for where we're at and what's going on. I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to say it. Everybody breathe with me. Tuesday is election day. This is huge. Mike and I had talked about this before and said, you want to talk about a piece of wholeness? I'm not entirely certain when it happened, and maybe to a degree it's always been this way and I just wasn't awake, but to me, I voted in every election that happened since I was a registered voter at 18. And I have this perception, and I don't know whether you do or not with me, but I've had this perception that most of my voting life, of course there were two parties, of course there were two sides, of course there were all those things, but it felt to me like people, when we would go to the voting booth, there was always, oh gosh, I want my team to win. But it wasn't, I want my team to win and the other side are demons. I'm not sure where we slid into this space of making the other side horrible. Because as we do that, it feeds, and that's what shows up. We get polarized, and we get further and further apart. And people that we love, if we found out they were on the other side of the voting aisle from us, we would think differently about them. It's very sad.
We were talking about before service responsibility, right?
Yeah.
It's easier for me to blame the other side, blame the president, blame whomever I want to blame, than take responsibility, because actually our country is built on we the people. We are the ones that are responsible for what we make our country, right?
All of us.
And that can be in every area of life, and that's what's so powerful about understanding wholeness. Whenever we are blaming or we're looking outside ourselves for wholeness or for something to come in and save the day,
for us to be okay,
right? For safety, for whatever, then that's when we're in trouble. It's always going to be an inner work. It's always going to be within us, right? And so it's easy to do that. It's so easy, you get in an argument, you blame the other party, you counsel, marital counseling, it's always the other one.
Right.
And really, what you really find, if you really get looking at it, is responsibility is both and, right? So.
People can do anything. And what hurts you in it often is your response. That's, responsibility.
Right.
Do we have responsibility, or have we moved into reactivity? End of discussion. Because Tuesday, we're going to have an election. Breathe. We're all going to vote or not, depending on what's going on. Wednesday morning, we're going to wake up. And there's either going to be a result at that point or there's not. There's going to be fighting or there's not. We're going to feel happy or we're not with the result. So does it ruin your week? Does it cause you to be unkind to other people? What does it do when you wake up Wednesday morning and either your team won or they didn't? Responsibility. It's up to us to move through whatever the results mean to us, to really look at what that means, to really look at our reactivity to whatever the results are, and to question its existence. Is that really what's going to happen? Was that rhetoric or was that real? And how do we remember that we are whole no matter what Wednesday morning looks like in the country that we call home? Responsibility. Pause. Before you go off screaming in someone's face, pause. Because whatever happens, no matter who gets in at even the highest offices in our country, this ship does not turn on a dime. It takes 3 years of a 4-year presidency often to find some of the first promises that were made in a campaign seeing the light of day. Breathe. This too shall pass. We are whole regardless of what happens in a political contest. And always, it's going to be our responsibility that allows us to remain unified as a country, unified as a people, unified as neighbors and friends and family groups. It's up to us.
To be that light, to hold that unity, and we sort of have the advantage, right, because we understand unity from a whole spiritual perspective, and we can be that pause,
right,
as well.
And every bit of it is an opportunity. That's sometimes what we forget. Mike brought it up earlier, we judge it right or wrong, good or bad. In the book, it talks about playing the creator game. I am the creator of my life by the choices that I make. What if I didn't choose to go off? What if I chose to remain in control of myself? What if I chose to recenter before I react so that I could move from reaction into response? And then that way I can bring peace instead of more division. No matter what happens on Tuesday, there's going to be the possibility of great division the next day. We get to choose whether that happens or not. We get to choose. No one outside of us has the power to make that choice for us. No one can. So how we show up with whether our party won or our candidate won or our cause won, it's all an inside job. And one of the things, I'm sorry, Mike, I wanted to give back to you, but one of the things, there's a question in here that they ask, what would I create for myself if I fill in the blank? What if I didn't bite someone's head off because they are a different political party? What if I didn't gloat openly to someone that I know that is hurting because of the results of the election? What if I didn't choose to show up as little petty Trish with an axe to grind? What if I made a different choice? What would I create for myself? Play that game with yourself this week and decide what reality you want to create.
Two things that he said in the book. One is that we're responsible for our response to whatever. Sort of in the name, right? Responsibility, our ability to respond. But the other thing I wanted to bring out is we are responsible for the meaning we give it. So we get to give the meaning of what something means. And it can be something that is in our life to bring us something and that we can grow through and can bring positive change, even things that appear to be bad or negative. Or we can get in the group with everybody else and say the same things and tell that same story and allow it to mean something completely different.
Right.
And that's a powerful truth to understand, is that we have the power to give the meaning to our lives. We're all living stories. Yep. The stories that we tell ourselves, and I recently, and part of it's because of unity, I've decided, you know what, I need to change. I need some new chapters in my life. I need to change that story that I'm living, and that's one of the most powerful things. You can do that, and that is a powerful thing. But first, you got to take responsibility, forgive yourself and anybody else who you're blaming. Let that go into that pause, right? Take that responsibility, and then from a place of empowerment, then we can begin to write the new story.
Right.
And whether it's an election, whether it's something we're fighting in our body or in our families or whatever, we're also coming up on Thanksgiving, and and that can be an interesting dynamic in different families,
Yeah.
So, but we can get to rewrite a new story this year in some of those circumstances.
Yeah. And you had said it beforehand, and I know you wanted to bring this quote up from the book, where he says, guilt is the feeling that we did something bad. Shame is the feeling that we are bad. There's a really distinctive and important line there. And he says, guilt is rarely helpful. Shame never is. If we take personally our shortcomings, we're always, and we talked about this on Friday night, we are always, every single one of us, in every minute of every day, doing the very best we can. And sometimes our best is phenomenal and life-changing, and it helps others, and it sets us up for this standard that we just want to meet again and again and again. And sometimes our best is getting out of bed in the morning and putting on clothes that we didn't sleep in. So allow ourselves to be human in that capacity and roll with what is our best and how can we improve our best by searching and being in our wholeness.
Because sometimes that is giving mercy and grace to ourselves.
Yeah.
Because every day is different. Our best is different every day. And everybody's on different journeys. And that goes into, I know we talked a little bit about spiritual malpractice and things on Friday night,
Yeah.
where we judge other people's journey. We should never judge other people's journeys because we don't know what other people's journeys are, right? And that's a form of blame and that kind of thing as well. At the same time, also giving ourselves grace for those days where,
Yes.
life's messy and that's okay
Yeah.
sometimes, and allowing that. It's still part of a process. And if you always trust the process and if you always go within, you're going to always come out better. That's just the fact.
That's the key. Yeah, that is the key. What are you expecting? What are you expecting to happen on Tuesday? What are you expecting to happen on Wednesday? What are those expectations, and do you have to see them fulfilled? Are you determined that if your party doesn't win, the week is going to be hell? Because if you're determined, the week is going to be hell. We're right. Whether you can or you can't, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So we need to hold ourselves to the ability to grow. And with that, one of the biggest pieces, I think, of this is, there are times we are stuck. There are times that we think that we need to be more. We shame ourselves. We think we should always know. We aren't going to always know. We can't see the whole picture. We can't know exactly what's going on in every piece of it. And if we see that as an opening for learning, instead of a thought that it means we are not enough or we are bad or we are powerless or whatever it is, if we invite it to be a thought for learning, it changes everything about what shows up. If we stop fixing everything in concrete, we see it, we meet it, we put it in its little category, we shove it in its own box, and then we never let it out of there. We're so good at holding people and situations in place and not allowing them to grow or evolve while we're growing and evolving the whole time. We need to allow that in ourselves, in our country, in our bodies, in our relationships, that wholeness and that allowing of our growth and our evolution. I don't want us to go on too long, but I had a dream with my late husband in it that was very, very powerful for me over this past week. But it showed me that I have him fixed in place, that I have him and his role as my late husband in my life. I had it fixed in place. He's supposed to steer. He's supposed to be my angel. He's supposed to be waiting there on my shoulder for any given moment for me to need his guidance and support. And then he's supposed to steer accordingly. And he's supposed to give the nod to what shows up in my life. I found out that I have this belief this week that I didn't know I had. I absolutely had no idea. I was gobsmacked when I woke up and realized that I was limiting myself and him. In the dream, he had come, and I realized very clearly that he was only there because I pulled him there. That he didn't want to be there. He was off being stardust and spaciousness and godness and spirit, and I was pulling him back to be my Tim. And the first thing I felt was shame. The first thing I felt was that I should be better than that. That I should know how to do this by now better than that. But I also had this awareness that I'm not allowing him to grow and evolve through the expansion of whatever he is now, whatever he's moved on to. And so when it started with shame and guilt, it switched pretty quickly to, I can use this as a learning, teaching moment. I can use this as something to evolve. What you're eavesdropping in on here is our breakfast meeting that happened like the next morning, because I was like, I have to talk to you. I need to help make sense of this, and I need to know how I can grow through this, and to drop the shame and embrace the opportunity. to grow, to be myself, to make more choices that support us and this space and our growth and our evolution. We can all do that at any time. Don't should on yourself. My dad used to say it not quite so clear, and you know what it sounded like. Don't should on yourself. So don't should on yourself. Allow yourself to be doing the best you're doing now and to grow into a new best tomorrow and Tuesday and Wednesday, and come back Sunday, and let's keep growing and keep evolving. Please. What did I leave out?
Just one thought that I wanted to leave you with. You're powerful by the choice you make, and you can make the choice to, and I say all the time, and you'll hear me say it over and over, I always ask myself, how's that working for you when things aren't working, right? But the power is I get to choose to change that story. So I just want to leave that with you. You have a power that all you have to do is exercise to choose. And God will bring things into our life to show us what needs to change. Some of us, you're sitting here and you already know. That's okay. Choose. And that's a huge power we have.
Yeah.
One of the main powers.
Every single opportunity that presents itself, every new person, somebody that gets on your last nerve, something that bothers you or shames you or embarrasses you, growth opportunity. Grab it with both hands and grow.
Whenever I feel guilt or shame, I know it's something I need to work on, because I know that's not what I should be feeling.
Yeah.
Right? Right?
Should.
But it's something that needs to be worked on, and I need to release that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so it is.
So it is.
And so it is. Thank you, guys.
Trish, Tina, and the production team thank you for joining us. You can submit a prayer request, donate, and find more information on our website at www.unityofsebring.org.